What's up, and welcome to another edition of the Cover 2 Recap. I'm BruinSportsPort.com publisher Edward Lewis, and as always, this is Ryan Karchi, the UCLA beat writer for the OC Register. We're here today at UCLA, where it just wrapped up its fourth spring practice of the season. Ryan, the number one news, or I guess note of the day, was Malcolm Bunch, the transfer OL from Miami, came in and actually got his first real full pads contact stuff. Looked great. Strong, powerhouse kid. What did you think of his day today?
Well, I thought it was interesting. They threw him, right into the fire. Jim Mora talked about he had to acclimate for a few days. Well, there was no acclimating today. He was in at left guard from, the first snap on 11 on 11. And he looked great, kind of like you said. He looked powerful. I mean, there was just a lot of drive behind him. I know he stood up Kenny Clark on a few occasions, which is no easy task. He did pretty well. I think he did even better, actually, against Ellis McCarthy. Problem was he was definitely gassed after about maybe 5-10 minutes getting those first team reps. That's gonna happen. I mean, Mora brought it up that he wasn't in any of the winter program that they did. He hasn't been in any practices, so it's been a while. It's gonna take him a little bit to get back into the swing of things. But I thought he looked great at the beginning of practice. He tailed off a little bit, but I think Jim Mora is right in saying that we're going to see more, kind of the best out of him in the coming weeks.
I think he definitely took the open or the leading candidate for that spot at right guard or left guard, or whichever guard is open now that Suafilo's gone. I think with his power, just raw power. I mean, nobody's moved Kenny Clark, Ellis McCarthy all spring, and he comes in on his first day and is like, okay, pancakes them both in his first hour at UCLA. I thought he had a great day.
Yeah, the interesting part of the equation is Scott Quessenberry. He's the guy. He did pretty well towards the end of the season last year, filling in at left guard when Xavier Suafilo went to left tackle. He's kind of the odd man out, assuming that Alex Redmond comes back and is totally fine, everything with his hand. But at this point, he's kind of that third guard. I know they'd probably like to have him as the backup center. And maybe you even redshirt him if you don't need him because of injuries, just to put some space in between him and Brendel. But at this point, he's definitely the odd man out.
Now, the other news and notes of the day were Zach Whitley, the star of the first week in terms of freshmen and incoming guys, moved to outside linebacker today. I didn't think he looked as natural there or as instinctive there. What was your take on Whitley moving to OLB?
I think it was just a situation where he's going to need some time to take care of it. I know we talked about it earlier, that maybe moving him out there takes away a little bit of his range since he's so athletic, which I think is a good point. But, I think we didn't really get a chance to see him rushing the passer. I think that would be maybe the most interesting thing to watch of him. But there's definitely a competition now. Jim Mora made it very clear. It's going to be Kenny Orgioki, Deion Hollins, and Zach Whitley all fighting for that spot. And I think Kenny Orgioki is probably the leader at this point. But I don't think he's the definite leader. I think if Whitley comes on late, maybe he'll have a chance to take that spot from him.
Other shuffling that went on, there was a little bit of backup offensive lineman shuffling where Quessenberry worked at left tackle a little bit in the backups, and John Lopez got a little bit there. But on the defensive side of the ball, there was also some shuffling. We saw for the first time really Tahan Goodman, kind of like we had talked about in the Cover 2 recaps from last week, taking that starting safety spot where they slid now Randall Goforth down the corner, and as opposed to Anthony Jefferson down the corner, and kind of even their base set, not necessarily in their nickel. I mean, what was your take on kind of all those moves and where you see all those kind of ending up?
I think it's interesting how much this secondary has improved. I mean, you're looking at this group, and there's at least 6 guys who could probably start. I think Tahan, I know you've been all about him this spring. He's been great. I mean, Anthony Jefferson looked good today. Fabian Moreau looked good today. At this point, Ishmael Adams is probably the odd man out, and he started last year as the number 1 cornerback. So I think there's going to be some shuffling, but it's kind of a good problem to have at this point. It's one of the strengths of the defense, I would have to say. But I think I agree with you. I think Tahan Goodman has kind of proven that he's that deep, free safety type. And if he's that rangy guy that they trust back there, he's going to get a lot of playing time.
Let's get into standouts of the day. Tell me kind of 2 guys that you were like, wow, today.
We've been all about this guy since last week, but Mossy Johnson just has really shocked me in these first 5 practices. Today, there was one move in particular where he caught I think it was a screen or a slant or something, and just literally juked Ishmael Adams out of his shoes. Just ridiculous. Broke his ankles. It was great. He looks great. I mean, he's been playing that inside receiver role. I think it'll be interesting when he gets that brace off of his knee. Maybe in the fall we'll even see a little bit more explosion. But in terms of just, raw skills, I think he looks like a wide receiver. It's kind of hard to believe we ever thought of him as anything else. But my other guy would be Devin Lucien. Everyone knew this was kind of a huge opportunity for him, but he's proven already that he's got more poise than he has in the last few seasons. He looks like the obvious number one wide receiver. I mean, he always made great catches in practice, but his routes are better. He's more explosive out of any of those changes of direction. So his hands are just as good as they've been, and since he got here. But Devin Lucien, I think at this point, he's kind of that lock for that number one guy. How about you?
He's also not really screaming at everybody about how good he is anymore. My two guys, number one, Fabian Moreau. I thought he had a really good day in 11-on-11s. He had 2 interceptions, including one kind of jump ball where he stole it out of Eldridge Massington's hands in the end zone. It was a real nice play, and he's really coming in his own. And you hate to say this about a guy that's a junior now or a sophomore, but he's got some NFL upside in terms of athleticism and the way his hips move and his ball skills. My other guy that I thought was good today was Thomas Duarte. I thought he's had a heck of a spring. I think his last kind of 3-4 practices have really sealed himself as not only kind of the best pass catcher on this team, but also kind of the best security blanket on this team. I mean, the guy is just always open, even when he's covered. He hauls down everything, and he even showed today he has a little bit of athleticism in terms of jump balls, leaping over Ishmael Adams for a touchdown. Let's wrap it up with kind of getting into guys that had bounce back days, guys that didn't necessarily have good first weeks, but had a good day today in the full pad scrimmages. Tell me some of the guys you thought.
The one name that stands out to me is Kenny Orgioki. There was one move in particular when he was doing one-on-ones. I think it was more of a pass rushing drill. He just put this amazing shake on Powazi Moala, and this was an Anthony Barr level move. I mean, the guy looks stronger. I think that's one of the main things I've noticed about him. His moves are a little bit more refined. I think if he can really step into that pass rushing role, I know we've talked about it, he seems like the guy. And today he finally seemed like that guy.
My guys there were Deion Hollins. I thought used his speed rush better today, and it was finally able to, he still has it. He still made some plays on Caleb Benenoch. The other guy was Tyler Foreman. That's a guy who had really struggled in his true freshman year as one of the younger guys on the team, but you can finally start to feel him loosening up a little. He's not thinking about things so much. He's showing off some athleticism, so I thought he had a good day. That'll wrap up our coverage from day 4 of UCLA Spring Ball. As always, you can follow him on Twitter at Ryan_Karchi and at OCRegister.com. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at EdwardLewisBSR and at BruinSportsport.com. Until the next time, thanks for tuning in to the Cover 2 Recap.